Next presentation, titled It's in the Data, and it'll be given by our speaker, Randy Eccker. Randy serves as the co-founder, chairman, and CEO of S3I Digital, a data-driven agency for sports. S3I specializes in aggregating the multiple disparate databases in an athletic department and creating intelligent, actionable insights to drive fan engagement. Formerly, Randy was the founder and CEO of XOS Digital, the leading digital media and coaching analytics company for the sports industry. And in this presentation, we're going to deal with the issue that sports properties and brands struggle with, and that is identifying, understanding, engaging, and managing their fan-consumer relationships. Specifically, Randy's going to talk about technology that allows for the cultivation of intelligent, actionable fan profiles and a variety of compelling ways to engage these fans. So please welcome Randy Eccker.
Where's your? Right here. Oh, there we go. It's right in front of me. Thank you very much, and thanks to all the other speakers. And John, thanks for having me. Right, what a great opportunity. What a great experience for you guys, and really glad to see kind of a full house and all the participation that you have. I think one of the things that you'll see. This is my pseudo bio here, and I think one of the things, I don't put it up there to impress you, I put it up there because as most of the people introduce themselves, people have done a lot of work. They've done a lot of different things, and as people aspiring to be a part of the sports infrastructure or the sports ecosystem, you gotta understand you're gonna have to be mobile, you're gonna have to be willing to do about anything. How many of us started as interns or graduate assistants? I mean, when people gave their their bio, their verbal bio, everybody started at a very entry level. Of course, most of us started before there were schools like this, right? There weren't sports marketing programs and graduate programs and things like that. But the thing is that you need to make sure that you're willing to do about whatever you want, it takes. The best advice I heard a long time ago was find something you're passionate about and figure out a way to make a living at it. Number one, your quality of life will be great, and the money will ultimately take care of itself if you do a great job, right? The other thing I would encourage you is to find people that you can relate to, mentors, people who are invested in you and in your success. I bet every one of us here owes our current position to somebody who helped them get to where we wanted to go. Right, so I've been in this industry a long time. I was a college basketball coach. I did TV and radio personality work for a number of years. I'm not nearly as old as that all adds up to. A lot of it overlapped. But I did some strategic and financial consulting for 9 years. I've been involved in over $250 million in transactions, primarily in the sports space. And I've been specifically involved in 4 different companies in the sports technology and digital media space. And after I left my last company, XOS Digital, I kind of took a look around the market and really wanted to focus in on the intersection between the web and the social web. And what is that? What's a real value driver? I started consulting with the company and ultimately became the chairman, which I am today, of the ecosystem, which has the largest collection of social data anywhere. Over 1 billion social profiles that have been gleaned from Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Salesforce and all of these companies and scraped off of 40,000 separate public websites. And that's impressive amount. And what it is, it starts to talk to the value of big data, right? And some of our clients at the ecosystem are Walmart, or Disney, or Coca-Cola, or T-Mobile. And those are the folks that are accessing this big data and this information, and hence the title, it's in the data. And that's something that as you guys evolve and grow, and most of you in here are digital natives, right? Most of you guys aren't, right? But most of you are digital natives, and like my kids, I've got 4 20-something daughters, right? And they use their cell phone, they use their tablet, they use their computer, they check their Facebook account before they get out of bed, They're involved in second screen experiences when they're watching TV with me. I'm focused on the TV. I might have my iPhone out, but they are on their iPhone with one eye on TV. And that tells you about where this is going, because you guys are ultimately going to be the buying power, right, that sponsors and these guys are marketing to, right? So that's very, very important to keep in mind when you think about your future in this industry. You're probably going to be doing a job that isn't even invented yet. And that's why you have to be flexible, and you have to be really smart, and you have to be willing to do about anything for anybody to help yourself to get ahead. And I don't mean that in a negative way, right? So one of the things that I've focused in on the last couple of years was, what's the real value driver of digital and social companies, right? So I did a little case study, and it's in the data. So one of my favorite companies is Apple, right? I've been following them a long time. I'm an investor in Apple. I love the company. I don't love the stock price right now, but I love the company. And it's really cool how, do a little case study. They've got $145 billion in the bank. They have record revenue and earnings year over year and quarter over quarter. They've revolutionized technology. We wouldn't have all the mobile devices, the tablet devices, if Apple hadn't been leading the way. They transitioned their company from a tech company 10 years ago to a media company. They control the supply chain from beginning to end. They own the content, they license the content, they sell the content. Yet they're trading at less than 10x EBITDA multiple. A lot of you guys are in business school, so I know you know what that means, right? So let's compare that to Facebook. The debacle that is Facebook, right? It's 10 years old. They have 90 million in the bank, not because they've earned it, because they raised it, right? Through a debacle of a public offering that really hurt them promotionally, and it's really hurt them in the market as well. They have challenges finding that, we're going to talk a little bit about mobile here in a little bit. They have challenges with mobile advertising. Right? They're still trying to figure out the model. It's starting to grow. It's starting to come together. It's a new company. It's a social pioneer. What does that mean? Yet, they are trading at over 100x times their EBITDA multiple. Why is that? It's because of the data, right? And it's not just the data. It's the underlying data that's generated through the engagement. But then every time that you guys engage, or I've got a Facebook account like a billion other people. Every time we engage, every time we share, every time we comment, it continues to build out that database and creates a stronger profile of who we are and what we like and what we're interested in. And as you add big data algorithms and principles, it starts to talk to what brands we like, what properties we like, what personalities we like, who are we attracted to. All of those things go into this. And that's why big data is so important to our culture in particular, in general, and sports specifically from our perspective, because that's something we're all passionate about and all very interested in. And I put these next couple of slides up here for no other reason than to underline that, this is a big industry. You've got 180 million sports fans. 60% of the population in the US and North America consider themselves avid sports fans. Right? You've got, in America, I've got results that say it's a $100 billion industry. I've got results that say it's a $300 billion industry. And it depends on what you measure. I took the lower number so I wouldn't be considered way out there. If you add gambling in, it's probably twice that. Some people estimate that gambling alone is a $300 billion industry worldwide. So this is a huge industry. There's a lot of people interested in it. There's lots of opportunities, but you have to find your way, right? You've got people over here that have found their way, that have worked up through the chains from internships or graduate assistants or low-level $5,000 a year jobs to start, those types of things to get to where they are today. And it's by those things that we talked about, being able to be willing to work hard, show up early, stay late, find somebody to mentor you, and ultimately find your niche. Find the thing that you can do better or you're willing to do better than anybody else, right? And that's why this is such a neat, I think, opportunity and something for all of you to think about, because the real value driver, all the things that the gentlemen were talking and ladies were talking about this morning, and the stuff that Paul was talking about here right before me, I mean, it's all driven, it's all data driven, right? Worldwide, $145 billion industry. The other thing that's really interesting about this, I don't know if you guys can see it very well, but soccer worldwide, you've got 3.5 billion soccer fans. You've got 2.5 billion cricket fans. Our lowly football and basketball only have 400 million worldwide fans. What does that tell you? And this is a huge industry in our country, but this is becoming a global industry. And there's global opportunities for those of you who want them. The challenge for all of us, which was brought up a little bit earlier, is that sports lag behind in aggregating and maximizing the value of that data, right? And I can tell you story after story. Our company is only 6 months old. We launched in September in earnest. We started signing up clients after the first of the year. We've got about 8 or 10 clients signed up. We'll have 30 to 40 clients signed up by the start of the football season. And every one of them have challenges with aggregating and creating value from their data, right? The chief development officer at the University of Nebraska, who's a friend of mine, we were talking about it early on before we even launched our company, he goes, Randy, I only know between 5 and 10% of my fans, only 5% of my donors, right? Those are the only ones that I really know on a personal level. I couldn't even tell you what the rest of the 90% do, right? The Ronaldo, who knows who Ronaldo is? You know, major international, maybe the best player, maybe the best soccer player in the world. He's represented by CAA, one of the big 3 sports agencies and good friends of ours and guys we're doing some work with. He has 60 million Facebook fans alone, and they have no idea what to do with it. All he does is he communicates back and forth. They don't know how to scrape the data. They don't know how to leverage it against other third-party databases. They don't know anything about how to do it. And that's why they're working with us. The senior associate athletic director at Tennessee, we were sitting down to talk to him last week in Atlanta at the IMG symposium. And we started talking about data. He goes, hey, if I had a magic wand, if somebody could come in and put together all my data so I could have a single fan profile of who my fans are, and I could manage to that profile, I'd be great. I said, well, geez, did you already look at our presentation, right? So, and that's another thing, and these guys will tell you, and it came out, you know, from common sense to ask your customers. When you get on the B2B marketing side, or if you're B2C marketing, ask the customer. One of the guys who used to work for us, ran our sales group, says, my sales strategy is simple. I ask them what they want, and I give it to them. And I would encourage you to keep in mind. So what is big data? So, you know, you go to conferences like this, or we go to tech conferences or social analytics conferences, and you can't get through a presentation without big data being referenced. But to break it down to its simplest form, it's really the collection and synthesis of both internal and external databases, preferably in real time, right? So you're trying to leverage first-party databases, which are your data, right? They're the ticketing databases, the concession, the merchandise, the donations, the seat licenses, whatever those are. And then you're leveraging that against third-party databases, social information, other third-party databases like the company, the ecosystem that I talked about a little bit earlier. Other folks that have created databases of sports fans and have gotten permissions through their social connectivity or through registration things that they've implemented. So it's really the coming together, the aggregation of all this data, whether you have it or you access it from other third parties or you create it through your fan engagement. And by doing that, you then start to build out this aggregated database that will ultimately help you to serve those clients, both from a service perspective and from an ROI perspective. So big data didn't just happen with the proliferation of Facebook, right? Big data has been around for decades. It contributed to the building of the atom bomb in the 1940s. Galaxy clusters and astrophysics in the 1960s and 70s. social disease and epidemics in the 90s and the early 2000s. Climate change. If you watch the Weather Channel, or you know, it's horrible things that are happening in Oklahoma now, but you watch the hurricane projections, and they'll talk about the European projections, or they'll talk about the American projections. The American projections were all done using big data, and it was all done by Northwestern University, who was also involved in the atom bomb. They were also involved in galaxy clusters and astrophysics. They were also involved in the predictions of social disease and epidemics. They're not the only ones, but they were. And they were also hired through grants from the federal government to create these analytics so that we could track and predict hurricanes, tropical storms that were coming from the Atlantic Ocean onto the coast of America, so that we could predict where they were going to go. And that was all big data. And with the proliferation of Facebook and social capabilities, it is now being used for large-scale data analytics, right? And again, the thing to understand about it, and it was touched on earlier by a number of folks, is that it's not just the data. It's the data that drives engagement, the engagement that drives permissions and more information that then gets fed back into your database. So it's aggregation, it's progressive, and it's enhancement. How does that apply to us? Right? Most of you aspire, I believe, to work in the sports industry. If you're on the properties level, there's pro properties, as many of these folks are. There's collegiate properties, like my friend Tim Curran over here is the Senior Associate AD right here at St. Joe's. And we'll do a little case study on the colleges and universities, and this references back to the Senior Associate from the University of Tennessee who wanted the magic wand. So on campus, Tim here, in his athletic department, will have somewhere between probably 10 and 40 separate and disparate databases, right? None of them are integrated, they're not aggregated, they're not accessible, and they're not intelligent, right? So if you want to sell tickets, you go to your ticket database and maybe your donor database, and you try and leverage that, and sometimes they're together because it's the same company, and then you try and upsell season tickets and single game tickets. Well, that's kind of a bad strategy, right? But that's all you have right now in college athletics for the most part, is because you're going back to the same folks every time with the same ask, right? So what we do is we take these folks that maybe appear in 6 or 7 or 10 of these databases, and we put them on one line for you. So you know their season ticket buying patterns for how many sports, you know how much money they donate to the university, you know if their kids are in your soccer camp or your lacrosse camp, they know, and then through some of the social and third-party data activation and appends, we know if they're Philadelphia Phillies fans, or are they Eagles fans, or do they like the Union, whatever that might be. So you get a much better picture of who they are, so you can manage those folks better. You can manage that relationship. You know not only who they are and what their likes are, but how they like to be communicated with. You know, we're all, especially you guys are digital natives. Do you like it on your iPhone? Do you like it on your iPad? Do you like it in your computer? Are you on connected TV? All of those things now can start to help us as properties and marketing folks to understand who you are and how you like to be engaged with. Additionally, as you add this third-party data, you take all of the various databases, you add your third-party data, we pull it into a single place, we engage with the fans, and then we drive that data and that information and those profiles back into the database, which makes it much more powerful as we go through, not only for the management, but ultimately to develop an ROI. Because that's what these guys are really looking for. They're looking for an ROI back from every fan. They're looking for a per capita fan. And to John's question earlier about the event, 30% of all revenue that's generated in sports is generated through ticket prices right now. Their job is to try and get up to 50%, right? So another 20% out of that fan while they're at the game, because you have a captive audience. And it's through merchandise, and it's through concessions, and it's through social media now. It's through in-game advertising and sponsorships. So you're trying to do that. Then the things that we're all talking about, in addition to the in-venue, is how do we then take that information and how do we engage with you outside of the event? Most of us who are sports fans, it's not a one-day-a-week deal, right? It's not an at-event deal. As Paul was saying, I'm checking my fantasy scores, I'm checking my other teams, I'm checking the people I'm interested in, I'm maybe sharing socially with things that are going on in my life or things that are going on at the event now. Twitter, the biggest spikes in Twitter are around what? Anybody know? Sporting events, because it's real time. It's the thing these guys were talking about earlier. And what Chris Lenchensky was talking about earlier is sports is VOD proof for the most part, right? Most people schedule to watch their sporting events for the fear of learning what the outcome is before they're able to watch the game, right? And that's why Twitter, it's well documented, Twitter spikes and Twitter comment spikes around sporting events. Big plays, big events inside the games, whatever it might be. As you're talking and looking at engagement, you need to be thinking about mobile, right? Mobile and tablet. And I think Paul was talking about that a little bit earlier. Your iPads and your tablet computers are the fastest growing distribution technology in the history of the world. Faster than typewriters, faster than computers, faster than iPods, faster than iPhones. The fastest growing in the first 8 quarters, there's 3 times as many tablets were sold than any other technology or any other platform. Next year, there will be more phones, and Chris had a slide on this. Next year, there'll be more phones than people worldwide. Right? So think about that. This is how your generation likes to be engaged. So kind of in summary, you've got all of these things around sports that we engage with or we interact with. There's video, there's social, there's third-party databases that are developed, there's social engagement, there's the games themselves and all the in-venue activity, there's donors, we're subscribers, we're scraping data off of public websites, there's sport camps, there's all these activities in and around sports. And every time you engage with them, you're creating data. You put that data into one place, you add some intelligence to it and some algorithms that have been developed over the last 60 years that apply to big data, and pretty soon you're able to manage those folks better and you're able to monetize those folks much better. Okay? So lastly, for you guys, big data in sports is really the next frontier. You've got a lot of things that happen. You've got lots of ways to communicate with fans. You've got lots of ways to communicate with other businesses and how to work with businesses to ultimately engage with fans. But I would posit to you, and we've all been talking about it today, the more technology that gets involved, and I thought Paul had a really good last slide, closing slide, that the marketing guys, the CMO, will be investing more in technology in the future than the CIO. And I think that's true. And the real driver of that technology is going to be the data. That's going to be the beneficiary, and it's also going to be ultimately the driver of how you get an ROI back on that internal investment is going to be determined by how well you're able to use your data to engage with your fans and to ultimately monetize and create an ROI from those folks, because that's what your jobs are going to be. Thank you very much. Really a pleasure to be here. And I think we have maybe 5 minutes. I tried to get through that fairly quickly so that we could ask a few questions. Yes, sir.
I know you're not Jim Cramer, Randy, but you talked about those valuations.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, do you understand where the market's going? Do you think the social media space is fairly valued, or do you think it's a little super? Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, the part about I'm not Jim Cramer, or no, the question was, that should be a side conversation, actually. The question was, do I think, in its basic form was, do I think that the social market and social companies are fairly valued today versus not being fairly valued, I guess, vis-a-vis Apple. I think Apple is undervalued, right? And as evidenced by its trading at like 7 or 8, its EBITDA right now, and the average companies are trading at 13 to 15x. So yes, Apple is unfairly valued. I think the Facebooks of the world and the Twitters of the world, they're overvalued probably, right? But they're pioneers, right? Every pioneer, it's like the Union Pacific Railroad back in the 80s. It was overvalued, right? But it was a pioneer, and it ultimately changed the way we traveled, changed the way we communicated, because then across the train tracks, they also put the telegraph, and we were able to communicate. So we are in a great example. There's been more data created in the last 2 years than in the history of the world. And why is that? It's because of social platforms and social analytics and social promotion and pictures and the way we ingest and engage and interact with multimedia now. So who knows if they're fairly valued or not? The guy who's an investor in our company is an investor. He's a institutional investor in Facebook and Twitter and Groupon and Palantir and all those data-centric companies, and I know they're very excited about that. And the challenge is the public markets are so fickle right now, given more political climate than probably anything else. So I don't know is probably my best guess, although I know there's significant value in the underlying data and the ability to monetize that, and that's why they're getting those types of valuations. Good question. Yes, sir.
It's interesting when you talk about Northwestern University and some of the work that they've done with predictive analysis. Is there any like industry that has characteristics similar to the sports industry that has scraped big data and has used that to monetize their business?
Well, most large corporations are doing this. There are tons of data companies out there, third-party data companies. My company, the ecosystem that I chair, Northwestern incubated. I mean, so corporate America and worldwide, Microsoft, Google, right? Yahoo, all those folks are doing a tremendous job with it. The reason why we're involved in sports is because it is such a blue ocean opportunity, because nobody's doing it right now. And there's so much value in it because of the value of live engagement in sports is so much different than any other industry. And the fact that most people in sports, and you guys are different, most of us, right? I started out as a coach, right? Most people started out in sports as a graduate assistant or an intern in the marketing department or the sports information department, or they were a coach and they ended up as the AD, and they're in my age bracket, right? And nobody knows about this stuff. I was fortunate. I got kicked out. I couldn't coach, so I got kicked out into broadcasting. I couldn't broadcast, so I got kicked into sales. I couldn't sell, so I ended up in biz dev, right? So, but I do persevere, if nothing else. So anyway, I think that's right. There's just not a lot of people with this type of acumen or expertise at the property level, and that's why there's so many opportunities for those of us. Yes, ma'am.
Do you see the data that you're using for fans to be used for like drafting? Like figuring out teams who to draft, like for stock in terms of like players like Tim Tebow or Brady Quinn who staff?
Yeah, that's a great question. It depends who you ask. If you ask the ownership, yes. If you ask the coaches, no, right? The Toronto Raptors are going through a very difficult kind of metamorphosis right now between administration and the coaching. The administration have invested heavily in big data type technologies for analyzing their team and for analyzing who they're scouting and potential draft picks or trades and things like that. And the coaches are fighting it. I don't want to say they're fighting it, but they're very reluctant to embrace it, right? Now, it's a little bit different than this. It's more on the statistical side, but it is becoming very, very prevalent in sports on the performance side. There was a movie with Brad Pitt a little bit ago, Moneyball. So Moneyball's become, in baseball, Moneyball and the statistical aspect of baseball is driving a lot of those things that you're talking about. So big data is alive and well on the operational side. It hasn't been alive and well very much on the property side. Thank you. That good? All right.